I never imagined I'd be capable of cheating on the man I married. My husband was a simple man, kind-hearted, hard-working, and faithful. The kind of person who, even without much money, did everything to make me happy. We had a quiet life, no luxury, but full of small moments that, at the time, I valued. But little by little, the routine started to suffocate me. I felt invisible, like the woman I dreamed of being was disappearing inside the home we built together. Then he appeared. My boss, the rich, powerful man who ran the company where I worked. I remember the first look we exchanged. A different kind of spark, a flash that ignited inside me a desire I thought I had forgotten. He made me feel wanted, important, alive. I, who felt so faded, clung to that with a desperate hunger. At first, it was just glances and conversations disguised as casual. But soon he started picking me up from work, taking me to expensive lunches, making promises I wanted to believe. I felt powerful by his side, as if I had conquered the world. And one ordinary night, when the office lights went out and it was just the two of us, I gave in. I kissed the man who wasn't my husband. And that was the first step toward everything falling apart. The affair consumed me. I felt a mix of guilt and adrenaline that kept me up at night. Deep down I knew I was wrong, but I kept telling myself I deserved more. I deserved to feel that passion, that desire. My husband, so calm and predictable, seemed too distant. I needed that fire only my boss gave me. It didn't take long before I made the decision that would change my life forever. I left my husband, the house we built, our story. I went to live with him, my rich boss. I thought I was starting a new life, full of luxury, power, and excitement. Little did I know, in that choice, I was opening the doors to my worst nightmare. The first time I stepped into that apartment, I was dazzled. Everything was so big, so bright, so different from the simple life I had left behind. I thought this was my new beginning, that the money and power of my boss would be the answer to all the emptiness I had felt before. I was wrong. In the first few days, he was everything I expected. Attentive, affectionate, engaging. He made me feel special, like I was the most important woman in the world. The dinners at fancy restaurants, weekend trips, expensive gifts. Everything felt like a dream, almost surreal. But I didn't know that this was the beautiful side of the monster I was about to face. Soon he began to change. Small details in the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me, started to make me uncomfortable. The jokes that used to make me laugh now had a bitter, controlling tone. When I tried to go out alone, he would call me several times, suspicious, wanting to know where I was and with whom. At first, I thought it was just jealousy, which even made me a little proud. He cares about me, I told myself. But jealousy turned into a prison. He started controlling what I wore, saying I should dress for him and only for him. He said that if I looked at another man, it would be the end of our relationship. I began to feel a lump in my throat every time he came home and found me talking to a coworker or replying to a message on my phone. Everything was a reason to fight. When he started insulting me, I didn't quite understand it at first. The words were sharp, cruel, but I blamed myself, thinking I must have done something wrong to provoke him. I tried to talk, to explain that I just wanted a little freedom, that I didn't want to lose who I was. He said I was crazy, that only he knew what was best for me. And then the violence came. The first time he hit me, I didn't know how to react. It was a slap to the face, quick and violent. I was stunned, not understanding what had happened. The physical pain was strong, but the pain in my soul was devastating. He apologized, said he didn't know what came over him, that he was tired from work, and promised it would never happen again. I wanted to believe him. But it happened again. New assaults came, more frequent and stronger each time. I hid my bruises with makeup, and the excuses to friends and family were improvised and sad. I was trapped in that nightmare and couldn't find a way out. Besides the physical abuse, there was the psychological abuse. He humiliated me, told me I was worthless, that no one else would want me. He made sure to remind me of the betrayal, of the mistake I had made. I felt small, useless, powerless to fight back. Over time, the pressure, fear, and violence started to affect my health. I lost weight, slept poorly, suffered anxiety attacks, and during one of those attacks I almost lost consciousness. I went to the doctor and he confirmed. I was sick, not just physically with visible marks all over my body, but emotionally shattered. My immune system was weakened, and even my heart seemed tired from so much suffering. Even so, I stayed. I blamed myself too much. I thought I deserved it because I had cheated on my husband, that it was punishment for my mistake. The fear of going back to my old home, of facing what I had left behind, also paralyzed me. And I didn't know he, my ex-husband, was nearby. During those dark months, the world seemed to close in around me. I no longer recognized the woman in the mirror. My eyes, once full of life, were dull and tired. I was afraid to tell anyone, to ask for help. The shame was as big as the marks on my body. The luxurious apartment, which once seemed like a castle, was a golden prison. I was alone, even surrounded by expensive things and luxury. That man, who seemed like everything I dreamed of, was actually a monster, stealing my dignity, my health, and my hope. Until one day, while getting ready to go out, I felt a sudden spark inside me, a desperate will not to let that story end this way. I needed to leave, to live, to be free again. That's when I began planning my escape. The decision to run away didn't come out of nowhere. It was the buildup of fears, pains, and sleepless nights wondering how that nightmare had taken over my life. I was weak, hurt, my body marked, and my soul even more torn apart. But deep down, a stubborn spark of hope kept burning. Planning the escape wasn't easy. He was always watchful, always suspicious. He wanted to control my every move, know where I was, who I was talking to, what I was doing every minute. The feeling of being a prisoner inside my own apartment was suffocating. I felt like a bird with clipped wings, trapped in a golden cage. I gathered all my courage to hide some money, packed a suitcase with what I could. I slowly said goodbye to the woman I had become and tried to remember who I was before all this. I needed to find myself again, to save myself. On a cold Tuesday night, while he slept deeply after another night of drinking and rage, I left. Without looking back. Without crying. Just with a tight knot in my chest and the certainty that I could never go back. I arrived in my hometown exhausted, with swollen eyes and a body aching with every step. I had no home, no job, no concrete plans. I only had a desperate will to survive. And it was there, in that moment of total vulnerability, that I found the deepest emptiness I had ever felt in my life. Returning to the place where my story had begun was nothing like I imagined. Nothing was the way I'd left it. The town seemed bigger and colder. The familiar streets now felt strange, almost hostile. I started looking for help, but shame and fear still kept me from speaking about what had really happened. I did odd jobs, did whatever I could to earn money and pay for the medicine that kept me alive. Medicine for my body and my mind. It was during one of those trips to the pharmacy, with the prescription shaking in my hands, that I saw him. He was behind the counter with the same calm smile, the same look I knew so well. It was my ex-husband, the man I had betrayed and abandoned. He was there, owner of the pharmacy, surrounded by the life I had left behind. He looked different, more mature, more confident, and for the first time I realized he had moved on. His presence shook me deeply. My heart raced, tears threatened to fall, but I held my posture. I couldn't show weakness. I asked for my medicine, avoided looking at him, and left as fast as I could. But that image didn't let me be. For days I couldn't forget. I relived every moment of our story, the mistakes I made, what I lost. While he built a new family, I tried to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. The pain of betrayal wasn't mine alone. I knew I had caused it in him, and that crushed me. But in that emptiness, I understood that I needed more than medicine to heal my wounds. I needed courage to start over. After that day at the pharmacy, I couldn't get the image of him out of my head. It was as if fate had put me face to face with everything I had lost, and everything I had destroyed myself. Every time I needed to buy my medicine, I tried to avoid it, but the need was stronger than the fear. That place, which used to be just a passing point, became a place where my past stared at me mercilessly. One gray morning he called me. His calm, almost distant voice came from behind the counter. "Can you come here for a moment?" My heart raced. I thought about running away, making up any excuse, but something inside me told me to stay. I took a deep breath and approached. He looked me in the eyes without judgment, but with a sincerity that surprised me. "How are you?" he asked. It wasn't just a polite question. There was a genuine concern, shy, maybe even a little uncomfortable. I wanted to cry, to hide, to ask for forgiveness without the strength to speak. So I started to tell him, slowly, without holding back, about the hell I had lived through. About the abuse, the humiliation, the sleepless nights, the constant fear. I told him about the illness that consumed me, the desperate escape. I spoke of the shame and the loneliness. He listened silently. Didn't interrupt, didn't try to correct, just listened. When I finished, he took a deep breath and said in a firm but calm voice, "I'm not the man you knew anymore. And you're not the same either. What happened between us is in the past. I'm married now, I have children, and I've built a life that makes me happy. I know you made mistakes just as I made mine. I forgive you, but I can't forget. Nor can I go back to how things were." Those words hurt more than I expected. Forgiving wasn't the same as loving again, and I had to accept that. I realized the love I once had for him died the day I chose a different path. I left with a mix of relief and sadness. His forgiveness freed me from a weight I had been carrying, but it also marked the definite end of what we could have been. Even with the pain, I felt that moment was a kind of rebirth. I needed to rebuild my life on my own, without relying on anyone, without expectations or illusions. And so, little by little, I began to find strength within myself. After that conversation at the pharmacy, my life didn't turn into a fairy tale. Far from it. His forgiveness didn't erase the dark days or the scars that remained, neither on my body nor in my soul. But it was as if he had given me a map to start walking a new path, even if it was a difficult one. I wanted to believe that starting over would be easy, but the truth was that the struggle was just beginning. Every time I passed by the pharmacy, I felt a mix of shame and longing, as if that place was a constant reminder of what I had lost and what could have been. I saw his wife, kind and attentive, and the small children who filled the place with life and noise. They were everything I no longer was. It was like looking at a version of myself that existed in another universe, a universe where I hadn't made mistakes. But even amid that turmoil, I needed to learn to forgive myself. I had punished myself so much for having cheated, for having left, for falling into that abusive relationship. I needed to understand that the mistake was part of my past but didn't have to be my future. Rebuilding my self-esteem was the hardest step. I tried therapy, support groups, friends who still listened to me. There were months of ups and downs, days when the desire to give up consumed me, nights when despair suffocated me. But every small step forward was a victory. Slowly, I got a modest job that gave me a bit of independence. I went back to school, dreaming of one day having my own life, on my own terms, without depending on anyone. I began to understand that true freedom was loving and respecting myself, even with all the mistakes of the past. I still take my medications, for my physical health and to keep my mind balanced. But I've learned that the most important medicines are invisible. Self-love, the boundaries I set with those who come near, the courage to say no and protect myself. And what about him, my ex-husband? Our relationship is limited to those few conversations at the pharmacy and the silent respect we have for each other. He lives his life, I live mine. Forgiveness didn't bring a reunion, nor did it erase the past. It only brought the peace needed to move forward. The pain of betrayal and violence may stay with me, perhaps forever. But today I can look to the future with hope, even if the road is long and full of obstacles. Because in the end, the greatest lesson I've learned is that no one deserves to live imprisoned, whether by an abusive relationship or by the weight of guilt. And that true healing begins when we choose to get up and walk again. Today, when I look back, I see everything I've lived through, the choices, the mistakes, the pain, and I understand that every step, no matter how painful, brought me here. I was reborn from the ashes of my own destruction, like a phoenix finding strength precisely in what seemed to be its end. I am no longer that woman who betrayed, who suffered at the hands of a monster, who hid in shame and fear. I am a woman who fell, yes, but who learned to get back up, who learned to love herself despite her mistakes, who understood that life is not made up only of happy moments, but of overcoming struggles. I still feel fear sometimes. I still carry scars that don't disappear, visible or invisible. But now I know I am greater than any pain. That my story will not be defined by my past, but by what I choose to do with my present. I've started dreaming again. I want to build a life based on my truth, my strength, and the respect I've finally learned to demand. I want to help other women who, like me, got lost along the way and need to find their way out. And the man I left behind. He continues his path with his family, his life. I wish him happiness, just as I wish happiness for myself. The forgiveness we exchanged was an important chapter, not to go back to the past, but to free our future. Today, when I walk past the pharmacy, I no longer feel that weight. I feel respect for myself because I know I overcame what once seemed impossible. Every step is a victory. Every day is a new chance to be happy. I was reborn. Not because of someone else, not because of external circumstances, but because of my own strength, that strength that was hidden but never gone. This is my story. A story of mistakes, pain, but also of courage, overcoming and rebirth. And I know that from here on I can be anything I want.